The CEO's husband suddenly took an unusual interest in me, bringing me an elaborate breakfast. But since I was suffering from terrible morning sickness, I gave it to his personal secretary. An hour later, a blood-curdling scream tore through the office. I ran to see what was happening and froze in my tracks. That morning, I had arrived at the office early, as usual. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the thick binders of reports on my mahogany desk. I had barely sat down with the intention of reviewing some balance sheets when the door to my office swung open. Travante walked in carrying a pale blue thermal food container, a high-end model I had never seen in our kitchen. Most surprising of all was the radiant smile he wore, a warm and strangely familiar smile I hadn't seen in a long time. He placed the thermal container on my desk with a gentle thud. "Good morning, baby. Happy 3rd anniversary. I wanted to do something special for you." I looked at him, stunned, and then lowered my gaze to the container. Travante, the man who was always busy with endless meetings and constant business trips, had cooked breakfast for his wife himself today. He unscrewed the lid of the container while explaining tenderly, "Lately, I've noticed you looking pale, and I know work is stressing you out. I got up way before dawn this morning to slow cook some chitterlings for you, your favorite soul food, to help you get your strength back. Eat them while they're hot." A dense steam rose, impregnating the air with that unmistakable, pungent aroma of chitlins stewed with spices and peppers. If I had been the Zendaya of 6 months ago, I probably would have been moved to tears by this unusual gesture of attention. But ironically, in that moment, that smell became my worst nightmare. I was secretly 3 months pregnant, and morning sickness was torturing me without mercy. Every time I smelled something strong or distinctively animal-like, my stomach twisted in spasms, and a wave of nausea rose up my throat. I held my breath, swallowed hard, and forced a smile. "Thank you, Travante. That's so thoughtful. But I actually just had toast at the house. I'm still stuffed." Travante seemed surprised for an instant. The smile froze on his lips before he quickly recovered his usual composure. He pushed the container toward me, insisting with patience. "Toast? That's nothing. Eat a little of this for energy. I spent the whole morning cleaning and cooking these. Don't do me like that." His words sounded soft, but they carried an invisible pressure. I looked into his eyes, searching for a glimmer of sincerity, but I only found a calculating expectation. Just when I was debating how to refuse without offending him, a knock on the door saved me. Kalisha, the new secretary hired 3 months ago, walked in with a stack of documents. She was wearing a tight pencil dress that accentuated her curves, and her face, carefully made up, radiated an air of seduction and ambition. She placed the documents on the desk, shot a flirtatious look at Travante, and then at the container of chitlins, saying in a honeyed voice, "Oh, look at the director being so thoughtful, bringing Zendaya something to build her strength up this early. You are so lucky, Zendaya. With a husband who's a perfect 10 like this, nobody can compete." Travante ignored her completely, looked at me to give a few final instructions, and left the office. In that moment, an idea struck me. I smiled and gently pushed the container toward her, my voice hiding a sarcasm that probably no one noticed at the time. "I just ate, and I'm absolutely full, and it would be a shame to waste Travante's effort. Kalisha, have you had breakfast? If not, you eat it for me. The chitlins Travante makes are delicious, and they're still steaming." Kalisha's eyes went wide with surprise, and then her expression shifted to one of jubilation, as if she had hit the lottery. She glanced at Travante's retreating figure, checking for objections. Seeing he didn't oppose it, though he remained silent with a slightly annoyed expression, she grabbed the container with enthusiasm. In a sugary tone, she said, "Well, if you insist. Thank you so much, Zendaya. I'll eat it all, won't leave a drop. I'm sure anything the boss cooks is a meal fit for the gods." I watched Kalisha leave my office hugging the container like it was a treasure, and I felt an immense relief at escaping the imminent heave. I tried to concentrate on work, turning the pages of financial reports, but the numbers danced before my eyes and my head spun. A sense of unease grew inside me, like the heavy, dark sky that precedes a storm. I poured myself a glass of lukewarm water and took small sips to calm the baby moving inside me. 3 years of waiting, and finally, heaven had taken pity on me, granting me this little life. I promised myself I would take care of my health and not let negative thoughts affect my child. About an hour later, while I was absorbed in typing, a loud thud was heard from the common work area, as if something heavy had fallen to the floor. Immediately after, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the silence of the entire floor. It wasn't a common scream of fear, but one loaded with extreme, sharp, and horrifying pain. My heart shrank. A bad feeling washed over me. I jumped up and ran out of my office. The scene I found left me frozen. Kalisha was writhing on the floor next to her desk. The container of chitlins was overturned, its contents scattered everywhere. The penetrating smell of the stew mixed with the stench of vomit, creating an unbearable funk. Kalisha was clutching her belly tightly. Her beautiful face was now disfigured by pain, pale and drained of blood. Her eyes were rolling back, and she was foaming at the mouth, while her body convulsed uncontrollably like a seizure. But what terrified me most was that the lower part of her beige dress was slowly staining a deep crimson. It was blood, fresh blood flowing freely, soaking into the office carpet. Employees were running back and forth, panic-stricken. Screams and calls to 911 filled the air. I stood there, hands and legs trembling, a lump in my throat. What on earth was happening? Why was Kalisha like this? It was the bowl of chitlins I had given her. The thought crossed my mind like a lightning bolt, sending a chill down my spine. At that precise moment, the door to the CEO's office slammed open. Travante ran out with a look of panic I had never seen on him. He didn't run to help his employee, nor did he ask what was wrong. He stopped dead a few feet away, eyes wide, fixed on the pool of blood on the floor. I clearly saw the expression on his face change from stupor to fear and finally to a demented rage. He snapped his head up and his gaze, sharp as a dagger, locked onto me. It wasn't the look of a husband worried about his wife seeing such a horrible scene, nor was it that of a boss pitying his employee. It was the look of a killer realizing his prey had narrowly escaped. He strode toward me and grabbed my arm with a force that made me cry out in pain. He hissed through his teeth, voice trembling with contained fury. "What did you do? Why? Why her?" That illogical and accusing question was like a bucket of ice water, snapping me back to reality. Why was he asking what I had done? Why was he so disappointed that the one lying on the floor was Kalisha and not me? I looked deeply into Travante's bloodshot eyes and felt a terrifying truth begin to reveal itself. I slapped his hand away, trying to maintain composure, and responded with an icy voice. "What did I do? I just gave her the bowl of food you cooked. What are you thinking, Travante? Were you expecting it to be me on the floor?" Travante froze, as if realizing he had said too much. He let go of my arm, took a step back, and wiped his hand over his face to hide his confusion and panic. The sound of ambulance sirens resonated from the street below, breaking the suffocating tension between us. The paramedics came up quickly, placed Kalisha on a stretcher, and whisked her away. Travante ran after them, but before entering the elevator, he turned to look at me with eyes that still distilled hatred and threat. He ordered me, "You have to come to the hospital too. This happened because of the stew you gave her. Don't try to dodge your responsibility." I watched the elevator doors close and swallowed my tears. The husband I once loved and trusted blindly had revealed himself to be a complete stranger, a calculating and evil man. That bowl of chitlins, if it hadn't been for the nausea, and if I hadn't given it to Kalisha, the person now lying in a pool of blood would be me, and my little baby would have shared my tragic fate. A cruel truth was beginning to take shape. Travante didn't want to take care of me. He wanted to kill our child, or maybe even me. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I would go to the hospital, not out of fear of his threats, but to witness with my own eyes the true face of this man. Sitting in the cold plastic chair of the waiting room, I interlaced my hands tightly to stop the trembling coursing through my body. The fluorescent light overhead reflected on the tiled floor, creating a spooky sense of loneliness. Trevante, the man with whom I had shared my life for 3 years, paced back and forth in front of the ER doors like a caged beast. He ran his hands through his hair, bit his nails, and occasionally shot me sideways glances, a mix of suspicion and hate, but didn't dare approach. Seeing his impeccable suit now wrinkled, I felt a deep bitterness. What was this man worried about? The life of his little mistress, or the fear that some dark secret would come to light? Finally, the ER doors opened, breaking the stifling silence. A middle-aged doctor walked out and removed his mask, revealing a serious and tired face. Trevante lunged at him like an arrow, voice cracking with tension. "Doctor, how is she? Is it serious?" I stood up slowly and approached, trying to keep my breathing calm. The doctor looked at both of us, his gaze lingering on Trevante a moment longer than normal before reporting slowly. The patient suffered acute poisoning. Luckily, she arrived in time and is out of danger. However, the cause of the severe hemorrhage was the ingestion of a large amount of misoprostol. The medical name made me frown, but for Trevante, it seemed to be a devastating blow. His face lost all color. His lips moved without emitting a sound. The doctor continued explaining in a firmer tone. "It's a drug used to induce uterine contractions, either to facilitate labor or to induce an abortion. With the extremely high dose we found in her gastric contents, it is clear this is intentional poisoning, not simple food poisoning. Following protocol, we have informed the police." Barely had he finished speaking when 2 uniformed officers appeared at the end of the hallway. They approached seriously and asked us to cooperate with the investigation. At that moment, Trevante seemed to snap back to reality. He hurriedly wiped beads of sweat from his forehead, attempting to regain the composure of the CEO he usually portrayed. He turned and pointed a finger at me, voice trembling but full of accusation. "Officers, you need to investigate this thoroughly. This morning I prepared a stew for my wife. She had the container in her office for a long time before giving it to Miss Calicia. I suspect my wife, out of unfounded jealousy, put something in it." I looked at Trevante, feeling as if someone were squeezing my heart. He already had his alibi ready. If I had eaten the stew, I would have lost my child. Since someone else ate it, he would blame me for poisoning. I took a deep breath, looked straight at the older officer, and said calmly, "I have no motive to do something like that. You can check the hallway cameras, look for fingerprints on the medicine bottle if you find it. And most importantly, I would like to know why a stew my husband claims he prepared to take care of me contained an abortion drug and why it affected his secretary so severely." The officer nodded, taking notes, and then asked the doctor a question that left us both breathless. "Doctor, what is the specific condition of the victim? What consequences has the use of this drug had?" The doctor sighed, his voice turning grave and sorrowful. The patient, Calicia, was 6 weeks pregnant, due to the massive dose of the drug, which caused extremely violent uterine contractions. We regret to inform you that the fetus could not survive. The world around me seemed to freeze. I heard Trevante let out a choked moan. His legs gave way, and he collapsed into the waiting room chair. His face was unhinged, eyes wide open, staring into the void. So that was it. That young, beautiful secretary was carrying his child, and he himself, with his evil plan destined for his own wife, had unknowingly ended the life of his illegitimate child, whose existence he probably wasn't even aware of. Seeing his pitiful state, I felt no satisfaction, only a wave of disgust rising in my throat. The love he had professed to me, or the passion he felt for his mistress, it all reduced to nothing in the face of his selfishness and cruelty. After receiving the shocking information from the doctor, the police officers decided to question Trevante and me separately, right there in the hospital. I was invited to sit in a quieter corner of the hallway across from the older officer, whose gaze was sharp but serene. He looked at me without judgment, almost with compassion, and asked kindly, "Ma'am, Please relate in detail everything that happened from the moment you received the food container until the incident occurred. Try to be as precise as possible. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small it seems." I closed my eyes, rewinding the movie of that fateful morning. I told him how Travante had appeared suddenly with excessive attention, something that had completely disappeared from our marriage in the last 6 months. I told him about the intense smell of the chitlins that triggered my nausea. I explained that I only opened the lid, looked, and closed it immediately. I emphasized every word. From the moment he left the thermos on my desk until Miss Calicia entered, I didn't move from my chair, nor did I open the container again. It was always in sight and completely untouched. I gave it to Calicia simply because I couldn't eat it, and she seemed enthusiastic about the idea. On the other side of the hallway, Travante was being questioned by a younger officer. He insisted on the cleanliness of his cooking process. He claimed, "I went to the market myself, got in the kitchen, and prepped that stew from the crack of dawn. I'm a very meticulous person. I never let the housekeeper touch my wife's food. As soon as I finished, I put it in the thermos and brought it directly to the office without it passing through anyone's hands." Travante was convinced this statement would present him as an exemplary husband, while simultaneously pointing to me as the only suspect, the only person who had been in contact with the container in a closed room. But in his panic, he had forgotten something fundamental. The more he insisted he was the only one who prepared everything, the more he put the noose around his own neck if it was proven the poison was already in the stew from the beginning. When the questioning session paused, the older officer approached his colleague, who was taking notes on Travante's statement. They exchanged a few words in low voices, casting furtive and significant glances toward Travante. Noticing this, he became even more nervous. He jumped up, raising his voice more than usual to hide his fear. "Investigate thoroughly. My wife has been very jealous lately. She's not right in the head. Who knows? Maybe she slipped the poison in when I left the office." I listened to every one of his cruel words. How painful. The man I once loved was now trying by all means to put me in prison to save himself. I stood up, walked over to them, looked Travante directly in the face, and asked with surprising calm, "Travante, if you think it was me, what would be my motive? To kill your secretary? Or are you afraid they'll discover that stew wasn't for Calicia, but for me?" Travante started. His eyes darted nervously, avoiding my gaze. He stammered, "You? What nonsense are you talking about?" Time passed with agonizing slowness. Every minute of waiting for the lab results was mental torture. I remained seated in silence, hand resting gently on my belly, in an instinctive gesture to protect the little being caught in the eye of the hurricane. Finally, a forensic technician came out with the results in hand. He announced in a grave voice, "On the rim of the thermos and on the spoon, we found fingerprints belonging to Mrs. Zendaya and the victim, Calicia, which matches the statements. However, the crucial point is that the toxic substance was completely dissolved in the stew, impregnating every piece of meat and juice. This proves the drug was added during cooking or immediately after, while the stew was still very hot and stirred in, well, not simply sprinkled on top once the container was closed." This conclusion was like a bucket of ice water for Travante, completely destroying the theory he had tried to construct to blame me. If I had added the drug upon receiving the thermos in the office, it wouldn't have dissolved so uniformly. Travante's face changed color, passing from pale white to an ashy gray. He started rambling, losing control. "No, it can't be. Surely it was Calicia who took the medicine. That's it. She was pregnant. She wanted an abortion and took the pill before eating. You have to investigate her. Don't accuse an innocent man." I looked at the pathetic scene of my husband, feeling a mix of laughter and pity. The man who was once my pride was now revealed as a coward, incapable of facing the consequences of his acts. I raised my voice, cutting off his ravings firmly. "Travante, stop kicking and screaming. If Calicia took the medicine on her own, why was it also in the stew? Are you going to say she took it and then vomited into the thermos? Does your explanation sound logical?" Travante spun around abruptly, eyes bloodshot. "Shut up! What do you know? You hate me. You want to destroy me, and that's why you staged this whole circus. It was you! You slipped it in secretly when I wasn't looking." His obstinacy made even the police officers shake their heads, weary. The lead officer closed his folder and looked at Travante with glacial coldness. "Mr. Travante, your statement and the forensic results present many contradictions. We need you to accompany us to the station to clarify some matters. Furthermore, we will request the recordings from your car's dash cam and the security cameras in your home kitchen to verify the preparation process you described." Hearing the word cameras, Travante jolted as if he had received an electric shock. I knew perfectly well we had a camera in the living room that pointed directly at the kitchen, and his luxury sedan had a camera recording all his trips. Those were the proofs that wouldn't lie. If he really added the drug to the stew, he undoubtedly would have left some trace. Travante's gaze wavered violently. His initial confidence had vanished completely, giving way to the naked fear of a criminal before the bench. He knew the trap he had set for his wife was now closing around his own neck. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and looked at my despicable husband for the last time before they took him away. "Travante, you once said this stew was full of your love. Now I understand that your love actually smells like poison. Luckily, fate wanted our child not to share the same luck as that poor baby." I left him standing there in the middle of the cold hospital hallway and walked away without looking back, silently thanking life for giving me a chance to survive and seek justice for myself and for the child I carried in my womb. Leaving the hospital, I didn't go home. I took a cab straight to the office. The sky was gray and leaden, with dark clouds swirling like an omen of a great storm, an exact reflection of my turbulent state of mind. Entering the building lobby, I felt curious stares and heard the whispers of the employees. The news of Calicia's poisoning had spread like a virus. Rumors were of all kinds, but the most malicious was that of the jealous boss who, finding out her secretary was pregnant by her husband, had tried to poison her to teach her a lesson. Hearing those inventions hurt like knives, but I knew I couldn't break down now. I had to be strong, stand firm to discover the truth, and clear my name. I went directly to my office and slammed the door, isolating myself from the gossip outside. Shortly after, someone knocked gently. It was Imani, my trusted assistant who had been with me since the beginning of my career. She walked in with a worried face, but a look full of determination. She placed a flash drive on my desk and whispered, "Zendaya, I did what you asked. I pulled all the security camera footage from the building and the parking garage for this morning. I found something very strange." I plugged the drive into my computer, and black and white images appeared on the screen. Imani pointed to the timestamp. "Look, Mr. Travante's car entered the garage at 7:15 a.m., but he didn't get out of the elevator to come to your office until 8:15. Normally it takes less than 5 minutes from the garage to here. Where was he during that hour? What did he do?" Imani's question froze my blood. An hour missing, more than enough time to carry out any dark plan. I looked closely at the screen, searching for more clues. Imani advanced the video to a recording from another camera in the basement emergency stairwell area. "And look at this. Pay close attention to this person." On the screen appeared the silhouette of a man in a white shirt and a mask walking in a hurry. He was carrying a fairly large black trash bag and was heading stealthily from the elevator area toward the dumpster area behind the building, instead of using the floor's trash cans. "It's DeAndre!" I exclaimed, instantly recognizing his slightly hunched walk and characteristic hairstyle. DeAndre was Travante's personal assistant and distant cousin, a man who followed his orders like a faithful dog. Why did he have to go down to throw trash away secretly via the emergency stairs at that hour? And what did that black bag contain? Was it the medicine packaging, gloves, evidence of the crime Travante wanted to make disappear after preparing his deadly stew during that lost hour? Imani looked at me with a firm voice. "I suspect there's important evidence in that trash bag. I sent someone to check the dumpster area, but the garbage truck just passed half an hour ago. However, I know DeAndre is cautious, but also very cheap. He doesn't usually throw important things into common trash immediately. He often hides them to get rid of them later. I'll send someone to follow him closely." I nodded, squeezing Imani's hand. "Thank you, Imani. Right now, I can only trust you. Be careful. They're cornered and could become very dangerous." Imani left, leaving me alone in the vastness of my office. I looked out the window. Rain was starting to fall hard, hitting the glass. Travante's web of lies and his accomplices were starting to show mortal cracks. That lost hour and DeAndre's suspicious action were the key to turning the tables. The rain outside showed no signs of letting up. Heavy drops pounded the glass, creating long trails of water like indelible scars. Sitting in my office, the light from the computer monitor illuminated my tired face, but my eyes burned with determination. Imani, my smart and efficient assistant, had just placed a thin dossier in front of me, though its weight was immense. She spoke in a low voice with a tone of indignation on my behalf. "Zendaya, look at this. I asked a contact in the building administration to check it out. The luxury apartment where Calicia lives isn't rented by her. It's in the name of a commercial services company." I picked up the paper. The name D&D Management LLC jumped out at me. It sounded pompous, but I knew it was just an empty shell. The legal representative of that company was precisely DeAndre, Travante's assistant and distant cousin. Imani continued her analysis, pointing to the attached bank statements. "The monthly rent is $20,500 plus high HOA fees, all transferred punctually from the account of D&D Management. But the funds arriving in that company come from a slush fund Mr. Travante created under the concept of representation expenses." I smiled bitterly, a smile that reached my soul. $2,500 a month for rent, not counting living expenses and shopping. Meanwhile, the dress I was wearing was 3 years old and worn. The purse I used was a modest brand worth barely $50. Travante always complained about the company's difficulties, asking us to tighten our belts to secure our future. Turns out the future he was worried about wasn't our families, but the luxurious love nest of his little mistress. I turned to the next page and found a photograph taken secretly of Calicia entering an elegant private clinic. The photo was from 2 weeks ago. Imani explained, "She went for an OB/GYN checkup. That meant Calicia knew perfectly well she was carrying Travante's child. She wasn't as innocent as she appeared. She was using that pregnancy as a strategic card to force Travante to make a decision." I looked at Calicia's young, smooth face in the photo and felt a chill. Behind that naive appearance hid a calculated veteran. She wanted to become the lady of the house in one fell swoop, destroy my happiness to build her own castle. But she didn't count on the man she had chosen as her pillar being a cold-blooded being, willing to cruelly dispose of his own son to protect his interests. The phone on the table vibrated suddenly, breaking the silence. The screen showed "My Love," a name I hadn't changed yet, and which now sounded terribly ironic. I took a deep breath. I put my hand to my chest to calm my racing heart and answered. On the other end sounded Travante's deep, familiar voice, but now I only heard a falseness that turned my stomach. "Baby, where are you? I just got out of the precinct. I'm exhausted. They asked me 1,000 things. My head hurts." I contained the rage and faked a trembling, worried voice. "I'm at the office. I'm so scared, Travante. Everyone is whispering. I don't dare go home. Are you okay? Did the police give you trouble?" Travante sighed theatrically on the other end, playing the role of the aggrieved husband. "What are they gonna do to me? He who has nothing to hide fears nothing. I'm just worried about you. I don't want you thinking crazy things and having it affect your health. Stay calm there, or go to your mother's house to rest. Don't listen to the rumors. I'll fix everything." Hearing those empty words of concern, I wanted to scream in his face that I knew everything, but reason stopped me. I needed him to be confident, to think I was still the naive little lamb so he would make more mistakes. I responded softly, "Of course I trust you. Get some rest. I'll come back a little later tonight. I have to finish a couple of pending things." I hung up and looked at the curtain of rain behind the window. Travante, you think you control the game? You're wrong. Night fell, and the city lit up with a vibrant glow, but that shine couldn't hide the dark corners of the human heart. I received a message from the private driver I had sent secretly, informing me that Kalicia's mother, Mama Hattie, had already arrived at the bus station. She had taken the first Greyhound from her small town in rural Alabama as soon as she heard her daughter had suffered an accident. I instructed the driver to take her to a modest but clean hotel near the hospital, and I emphasized not to take her to see her daughter yet, as visiting hours were over. It was better for her to rest after the long trip. I arrived at the hotel past 9 p.m. As soon as I entered the lobby, I recognized Mama Hattie. She was sitting, huddled on a sofa, a petite and thin figure in a simple brown dress. She wore worn-out sneakers, and next to her were 2 large cloth bags filled to the brim. Surely they were fresh produce, collard greens, maybe sweet potatoes. Humble gifts a poor mother had brought with effort for her daughter. The image moved me, reminding me of my own grandmother down south, just as hard-working, sacrificing everything for her kin. Seeing me approach, Mama Hattie stood up nervously, clasping her hands, cracked and weathered by work. I smiled, took her hand, and said kindly, "You're Kalicia's mother, right? I'm Zendaya, Kalicia's boss at the company. I knew you were coming and wanted to make sure you were okay, that you had eaten and had a place to rest." Mama Hattie's eyes filled with tears, and her voice, thick with a heavy southern accent, trembled. You're my Kalicia's boss? Lord bless my soul. You are very good, child. I don't know what foolishness she must have done to end up like this. At home, she's a very good, hard-working girl, you know. I helped her sit down and poured her a glass of water. Seeing the love and pride in her eyes when talking about her daughter, I felt a knot in my stomach. She didn't know her good and hard-working daughter lived in a luxury apartment that she, working her whole life, couldn't even dream of, that she used designer bags whose value equaled her entire fortune. I asked gently, "Does Miss Kalicia call you often? Does she tell you things about her life or work?" Mama Hattie responded with sincerity, "Of course she does, calls me all the time. Says they treat her real good at the company, that the pay is good, and she lives in a free company dormitory that's real nice. Every month she sends me $100 for my medicine and tells me not to worry, that she wants for nothing." Hearing this, I couldn't help but sigh. $100 for her mother, but willing to spend thousands on a whim to please her lover. How fragile and false was that filial devotion. I decided Mama Hattie had to see the truth, even though I knew it would be cruel for her. I feigned surprise. "Oh? She told you she lived in a dormitory? I thought Kalicia had rented a luxury apartment in Buckhead. That's a very expensive area. Rent for 1 month there equals a year of a worker's salary, and I see her often with designer things. The other day she was carrying a purse that I heard costs almost $2,000. Mama Hattie froze. Her cloudy eyes opened wide, full of confusion. "What? What are you saying? $2,000 for a purse? That can't be. My girl is very thrifty. She hates throwing away even a torn shirt, and she told me she lived in the company dorm." I patted the back of her hand gently and lowered my voice in a tone full of insinuation. "Surely Kalicia didn't want to worry you, and that's why she didn't tell you the truth. But you rest easy. Tomorrow I'll take you to the hospital and you can talk to her to clear everything up. I just worry that being so young and pretty in a city full of temptations, someone might take advantage of her and ruin her life." My words planted a seed of doubt in that mother's heart. Mama Hattie sat absorbed, staring into the void, while her trembling hands played with the hem of her dress. She was starting to realize her little girl had become a stranger, hiding terrible secrets. I left the hotel with a heavy heart. I didn't want to hurt her, but she was the most important witness, the only person who could wake up Kalicia's conscience, and, at the same time, the leverage I needed to unmask Travante. In this war, everyone would get hurt, even the most innocent. The next morning, just as I was leaving the garage to go to the office, a figure blocked my path. I slammed on the brakes with my heart in my throat. Looking closely, I saw it was DeAndre. He was there, looking furtive, glancing around as if fearing someone would see him. He tapped gently on my car window, signaling me to talk to him. I rolled down the window just enough to hear him, keeping a safe distance. "Mrs. Zendaya, can I have a minute? I have something very important Mr. Travante asked me to hand-deliver to you." His voice was a trembling whisper. I smiled with disdain and unlocked the door just enough for him to slip into the passenger seat. In the confined space of the car, I perceived a sour smell of sweat and stale tobacco emanating from him. He was clearly very nervous. He pulled a thin file from his jacket, left it on my lap, and withdrew his hand as if burned. "What is this?" I asked with a cold voice, without even looking at him. It's an old medical record of Miss Kalisha that Mr. Travante found this morning," DeAndre stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Inside here, right here, is a receipt for the purchase of a medication, an abortifacient she bought yesterday at a shady pharmacy. The boss says, take this and give it discreetly to the police, saying you found it by chance in a drawer of Kalisha's desk. That way Mr. Travante will be free of suspicion and you won't be implicated either." I took the file and opened it slowly. Inside was a superficial medical report and a crumpled receipt. I held the receipt up to the light. The handwriting was a scribble specifying the name of the drug, misoprostol. The purchase date was from the previous afternoon, but the most ridiculous thing was that the ink on the receipt was fresh and the paper pristine, without a single wrinkle. It was evident this was a fake invoice made in a hurry the night before. "Burning the evidence in my hands," I murmured, before turning and fixing him with a stare so sharp he shrank back. "You and Travante think I'm stupid. The ink on this receipt hasn't even dried. You're asking me to give this to the police? That's like asking me to confess I falsified evidence. Or maybe what y'all want is to blame Kalisha for buying the drug and committing suicide out of depression, so Travante walks clean, and I take the blame for knowing and not stopping it." DeAndre paled. His lips trembled uncontrollably. "No, it's not that, ma'am. The boss said if you just handed it over, everything would be solved. You're his wife, you have to help him. If something happens to him, the company will sink, and you'll lose everything." He was trying to play the card of fear regarding losing my assets and status. But he was wrong. This wealth was the blood, sweat, and tears of my parents. I preferred to destroy it and start from scratch than leave it in the hands of a murderer. I threw the file back at him with a firm voice. "Take this trash and get out of my car right now, and tell Travante if he wants to stage a play, hire more professional actors. And you, DeAndre, you're being an accomplice to a murderer. You better worry about your own skin, lest you regret it when you're already in jail." DeAndre gathered the file in a hurry, opened the door, and ran out like a soul chased by the devil. Watching his pathetic figure disappear behind a concrete pillar, I knew Travante was desperate. He was drowning in the mud he himself had created, and the more he struggled, the tighter the noose got. This clumsy farce not only wouldn't save him, but was also further proof of the cruelty and baseness of a despicable husband and boss. Back in my office, I called Imani immediately. The atmosphere in the office had become as tense as a command post in the middle of battle. Imani placed her laptop on the desk, face lit up with the excitement of someone who just found treasure. "Zendaya, just as you suspected, I reviewed all of Travante and DeAndre's call logs from the last week. There's an unknown number that appears with alarming frequency, especially the night before the incident. I investigated and found out who it belongs to. You're not going to believe it. It's Soraya." Soraya. I searched the name in my memory. Imani added quickly. "Soraya was Travante's classmate in college. Now she's a pharmacist and works as a rep for a big lab. According to some old girls from HR, she had a fling with Travante back in the day, but they broke up when he married you. I didn't imagine they had reconnected. A pharmacist, an ex-girlfriend, and secret calls at night." All the loose pieces started fitting into a complete picture. Travante couldn't buy that restricted drug himself for fear of being discovered, so he turned to Soraya. Maybe he cajoled her with promises of money, or rekindled old feelings to convince her to help. "Did you find any proof they met?" I asked, heart beating 1,000 miles an hour. Imani nodded. Her fingers slid quickly across the keyboard. "Here it is. I hired a private investigator to pull security footage from the area near DeAndre's fake company. Look at this corner of the screen." On the monitor appeared a black and white video of somewhat blurry quality, but sufficient to recognize the people. A family car stopped in a discreet corner. DeAndre got out and looked around. Shortly after, a tall woman with sunglasses approached. It was Soraya. She handed DeAndre a small package wrapped in newspaper. He took it, pocketed it quickly, and both separated in a hurry. The date and time on the camera corresponded to the afternoon before the incident. "A small package wrapped in newspaper," I murmured, without taking my eyes off the screen. "That's the poison. Soraya is the one who provided the weapon to Travante." I turned to Imani with a steady gaze. "Imani, this is the weakest link in their chain. Soraya has an education, a stable job. She could do this for money or love, but I'm sure she's not a professional criminal. She'll be terrified if she finds out she runs the risk of going to jail for complicity in attempted murder." Imani caught my drift instantly. "You mean we're going to pressure Soraya psychologically?" I nodded with an icy smile. "Exactly. Travante is trying to blame Calicia, and it's very likely he also has a plan to blame Soraya if everything comes to light. He'll say she gave him the drug on her own or tricked him saying it was a vitamin supplement. We have to get ahead of him. I'll meet with Soraya and show her the dark future Travante has prepared for her. Between going to jail for her old flame or testifying to get leniency, I trust Soraya is smart enough to know which path to choose." The net was cast, and the most important prey had been located. I knew the imminent meeting with Soraya would be a game of mental chess, but I held the aces Travante couldn't even imagine. The raw and brutal truth was about to come to light, and those who sow the wind will inevitably reap the whirlwind. The next morning, the sky was still covered by a gray blanket, as if about to unleash another storm over the city. I picked up Mama Hattie from the hotel and took her to the hospital to see her daughter. The elderly woman from the country still carried her old red plastic basket filled with yard eggs and fresh vegetables from her garden. "My Calicia loves eggs from our chickens at home," she told me. "Says the city ones smell fishy and ain't as tasty." Listening to her shrank my heart. A mother's love is immense like the ocean. But her daughter had traded that love for the vanity and luxury of the city. Entering the hospital room, the intense smell of disinfectant made Mama Hattie wrinkle her nose and hesitate before entering. Calicia had been moved to a regular room. She lay in the white bed, pale and gaunt like a withered leaf. Seeing her mother, her eyes snapped open, and her dry lips barely managed to pronounce a weak, "Mama." Mama Hattie ran to the bed, left the basket on the floor, and grabbed her daughter's freezing hand while tears ran down her face. "My child, how did you end up like this? Why did this happen to you?" Calicia turned her head, avoiding her mother's gaze, while tears of bitterness rolled down her cheeks. But Mama Hattie, with the instinct of a mother who has counted every penny, fixed her gaze on the bedside table. There, Calicia's expensive designer bag rested next to a latest generation smartphone. The contrast between those luxury objects, the old basket on the floor, and her mother's worn clothes created a suffocating atmosphere. Mama Hattie pointed at the purse with a trembling finger, voice cracking. "That purse! Mrs. Zendaya told me it cost $2,000. Where did you get the money to buy it? With what you earn, you barely make enough to send me a little something. How dare you waste money like that?" Calicia, terrified, looked at me and then turned to her mother, denying everything. "It's not true, Mama. Zendaya is wrong. It's a knockoff. It cost me $20 at the flea market. Don't listen to what people say." I was standing, leaning against the door, observing that clumsy performance in silence. I approached the bed slowly, put a hand on Calicia's shoulder, and whispered in her ear with a low voice, but loaded with enough threat to instill atrocious fear. "You think Travante is coming to see you? He's too busy trying to prove to the police that you were the one who bought the medicine. Whether this bag is real or fake, you and he know better than anyone. Stop lying to your mother." Kalisha froze, looking at me with eyes wide with panic. Fear took over her. She understood that I knew everything, and more importantly, that the man she had entrusted her life to was abandoning her like a useless object. Mama Hattie, seeing her daughter tremble, thought it was from pain and started massaging her hands, whispering words of comfort. Seeing the scene, I felt no satisfaction, only deep sadness. The raw truth would have to come out sooner or later, and the person who would suffer most wouldn't be the guilty one, but the innocent mother who loved her daughter with all her heart. I sat in a chair apart, pretending to look at my phone to give them space, but in reality observing every change in Kalisia's mood. Before sitting, I deliberately left the file DeAndre had given me that morning on the bedside table next to Kalisia's purse. I left it slightly open so a corner of the fake receipt for the misoprostol purchase was visible. I knew Kalisia's curiosity, and above all, I knew that in her state of anxiety, any clue related to Travante would be a burning nail to hold on to.